Apple has just delivered one of the biggest AppleHome updates we've seen in years. HomeKit Secure Video gets an update with 4K recording and powered by Apple Intelligence. There's faster device setup and new onboarding process. Energy monitoring is finally coming to AppleHome, and Shortcuts gets one of the biggest updates ever. iOS 27 Beta 1 along with the other betas came out in the last 24 hours, and the finally public version will likely ship in September. So bear in mind there's a lot to change by then. I've been digging deep into iOS 27 Beta 1 to find everything new with AppleHome. For anyone new here, I'm John. I've been using AppleHome for over 10 years and covering smart home tech for 6 of those. If you enjoy AppleHome news, reviews, and detailed tutorials, make sure to subscribe. You can also follow on my other social channels to keep updated with the latest AppleHome news. Before we jump into AppleHome, it's impossible not to mention the completely rebuilt Siri and Apple Intelligence, as this is relevant to a lot of the new AppleHome features. Apple has revealed an entirely new Siri powered by Apple Intelligence and can understand your personal context, how you interact with apps, understand what's on your screen. For example, Siri can now find information from your messages, emails, notes, calendars, and supported apps. Apple demonstrated Siri finding a friend's address from an old message, locating photos from a recent trip, and helping plan an event by pulling together from multiple sources. It can now understand what's currently on your screen. If you're looking at a document, it can answer questions about it. Apple has also introduced a much more conversational experience, rather than simply asking a question and starting again every time. A new dedicated app also allows you to revisit previous conversations and continue them across your Apple devices. Apple is also introducing a new voice experience with more natural and expressive voices alongside major improvements to dictation. One thing repeatedly emphasized throughout the presentation was privacy. Apple Intelligence continues to rely on device processing where possible, and when more powerful cloud processing is required, it uses Apple's private cloud compute system, which Apple says ensures personal data is never stored or accessible even to Apple itself. Now turning to AppleHome, and we'll start with what is possibly the headline feature. HomeKit Secure Video now supports 4K recording on compatible cameras. For years, one of the biggest complaints from HomeKit Secure Video has been the 1080p limitation. Even if you purchased a 2K or a 4K camera, once footage was recorded through HomeKit Secure Video, it was reduced to 1080p. Apple says compatible cameras can now record and playback footage in full 4K resolution. Now, it does appear based on my testing that manufacturers do need to enable, as I do have a number of 4K cameras and they're still not being enabled. But remember, this is still beta 1, so there's a lot of progress to be made. Apple Intelligence also comes to HomeKit Secure Video. AppleHome can now analyze recorded clips and generate summaries describing what happened. Instead of manually opening recordings and scrubbing through footage, AppleHome can now automatically provide a description of events. For example, a person walks up the driveway carrying a package. AppleHome now understands the context of the recording rather than simply identifying motion. This is a major shift because HomeKit Secure Video is moving beyond motion detection and becoming a genuinely intelligent video system. And because this is powered by Apple Intelligence, it fits naturally into Apple's privacy-focused approach. You can now also search recordings using natural language. Instead of trying to remember when something happened, you simply search for it. The system understands what happened in the video and surfaces the relevant recordings. Apple has also announced something I've wanted for a long time. AppleHome can now understand activity across multiple cameras. Previously, every camera existed largely in isolation. Now, AppleHome can connect recordings together. Imagine someone walking up the drive. One camera sees them arrive, another one sees them approach the door, and a third sees them leave. Apple has also redesigned the interface. All cameras can now be viewed together in one single timeline. You can also jump between cameras if you want to focus on a specific view. There's also a new filtering system. You can filter recordings by event type. For example, packages, people, animals, and vehicles. With anyone with multiple cameras, this could make navigating footage dramatically easier. There is, however, one change I'm not entirely convinced about. The traditional timeline appears to have disappeared. Instead of quickly jumping to a specific date, it looks like you now need to scroll through the entire recordings. Hopefully, Apple continues revising this before the release and the old timeline comes back, because I found this incredibly useful. While there's a lot to be excited about, Apple did not announce Matter camera support. One feature many users have been also asking for is pan and tilt and zoom controls. Today, if you own a camera with pan and tilt and zoom, you need to jump into the manufacturer's app to move the camera around. Of course, it's worth remembering, again, we're only at the start of the beta cycle. Apple has already announced more HomeKit Secure Video changes we've seen in years, so I wouldn't completely rule out additional additional camera features arriving before the final release. One thing I did notice when I was having a look, AppleHome also gains a dedicated Apple Intelligence section within settings. This suggests that Apple Intelligence will become part of the core AppleHome experience moving forward, not just for cameras. As more intelligence-based features arrive, having a dedicated settings area makes a lot of sense. This feels like Apple is laying the groundwork for much more to come. Another long requested feature is also arriving. AppleHome now supports energy monitoring for compatible smart plugs and sockets. This means you'll be able to see usage data information directly inside AppleHome rather than relying on a manufacturer's app. Although the current implementation in Beta 1 is basic, but hopefully this will get updated as the timeline progresses. I'd also like to see you be able to trigger automations based on this information. For example, you could trigger a notification when your washing machine finishes based on power consumption dropping below a certain level. Another feature is intelligent notifications. If you're like me and have multiple cameras, door sensors, locks, and other accessories, AppleHome notifications can quickly become overwhelming. Apple is now using Apple Intelligence to understand related events and group them together into a single live notification that updates as activities happen. So instead of receiving multiple notifications for the same event, you'll see one notification that continues to update as the activity unfolds. Apple also announced improvements to device onboarding. In simple terms, adding devices to AppleHome should now be faster and more reliable. Apple says pairing has been streamlined to make setup quicker and more reliable. And based on my testing, the onboarding process is slightly different, with the ability to choose device icon right from the onboarding process. I've also tested adding a smart light and found that Apple's claim may be true based on my limited testing. The device was added in under 40 seconds, which is a record for me. Shortcuts is now powered by Apple Intelligence. Instead of manually building automation step by step, you simply describe what you want to use with natural language. For example, you can type, "When I leave work, send my partner an ETA and play my podcast." Apple Intelligence automatically creates a shortcut for you, including all the actions, triggers, and logic required. This, in my opinion, is a huge step forward because shortcuts have always been incredibly powerful, but it can feel overwhelming for many users. Now, Apple Intelligence handles that complexity for you. And while Apple didn't specifically announce AI-generated AppleHome automations, it's difficult not to see where this could be heading. Imagine saying when the last person leaves home, turn off all the lights, lock the doors, close the blinds, and start the robot vacuum. The technology Apple demonstrates in shortcuts feels like the perfect foundation for creating advanced AppleHome automations using nothing more than natural language. One thing I've seen a lot of people talk about is the lack of HomeOS and no hardware. Honestly, I never expected Apple to announce HomeOS or any hardware at WWDC. I actually said this in my preview video, and I still believe September or later this year is the most likely time frame for any major AppleHome hardware announcements. What's interesting though is Apple's own software preview page. You see iOS, iPad, macOS, and watchOS, and visionOS as well, all predominantly featured for this fall, but tvOS isn't. tvOS 27 does exist. The developer beta is already available. I've got it running on my Apple TV, yet Apple isn't highlighting it alongside the rest of its major platforms. But this does make me wonder whether Apple is preparing for a much larger and bigger push into the home. For years we've heard rumors of a dedicated HomeOS experience powering future AppleHome products, including a smart display, new HomePods, and a future new Apple TV. If Apple is planning a major push into the Smarthome with this new hardware, WWDC was probably never going to the place to announce it, and they may have just laid the foundations for the future. So my final thoughts, overall, I do think this is a significant update for AppleHome, and the headline feature is 4K and the HomeKit secure video, intelligent stuff that we've seen with natural language, intelligent video summaries, and camera understanding. You also get the smarter notifications, AI-powered shortcuts, and energy monitoring. Now, I'd love to hear from you. What announcements are you most excited about? So guys, that's the end of the video. If you did enjoy it, a like really goes a long way to help the channel. You can also check out other videos on the channel. I've linked some in the description below. And if you want to become part of this AppleHome community, make sure to hit the subscribe button and the bell button so you don't miss when new videos go live. You can also check me out on the other social channels on X, Facebook, TikTok, and Instagram by searching for AppleHome Authority. Thanks very much. I'll speak to you soon.